So if we look at what is politically significant compared to 2008, several issues stand out very, very clearly. The first one, of course, is the campaigning style. It is quite clear that Najib and the Barisan Nasional have decided to adopt a very presidential type of election. If you look at the Barisan Nasional campaign, it's almost exclusively all Najib. The main manifesto, if you look at the printout, the front cover page only shows Najib and nobody else. If you compare them to the manifesto published in 2008, you had a row of all the BN leaders. But in this election, everything revolves around Najib. And this is consistent with his brand of One Malaysia. You know, right, the joke is that One Malaysia is actually One Najib. It's the same thing. So this is very consistent with a very presidential type of election where he reaches out directly to the public. So the idea is that if you vote for Najib, you are actually voting for Barisan Nasional as well. So that's significant. The second significant point, of course, is that Najib is actually reaching out to all the key components of the Barisan Nasional constituency directly this time. Again, this is very, very different from 2008 or 2004. So if you look at him, he has reached out to the Chinese community. He has held a number of very high-profile meetings with Chinese business groups, Chinese cultural groups, and a lot of these meetings were done directly through his office. In other words, the MCA or Gerakan was not involved. And this pattern is repeated when he deals with the Indian community. And a very simple example of that is that the recent MOU signed with Hindraf. You can see very clearly from the picture that was published in the Tamil newspapers that the picture shows Najib with Hindraf leader and Kunam signing the MOU on behalf of Barisan Nasional, but there was no MIC representative there. So this is another example of how he has reached out directly to the different groups and bypassed the component parties in the Barisan Nasional. The third point I want to make, which is significantly different from 2008, is that for the very first time, both sides, Pakatan Rakyat and Barisan Nasional, are promising reforms. The only difference is the pace of reforms. Barisan is arguing that we have reformed since 2008. If you stick with us, you're going to reach Wawasan 2020 in 2018, 2 years ahead. So it's incremental reforms, but we are doing it and picking up the pace. Unlike Pakatan Rakyat, which is promising a wholesale reform the moment they take power in Putrajaya. Okay. The fourth point is that the selection of candidates time was much more competitive. And this is especially true among Pakatan Rakyat parties. And of course, the answer is fairly obvious. It's because people think that, or many people think that Pakatan Rakyat will stand a chance in winning many seats. Therefore, a lot more candidates suddenly shot up. You all know, right, in 2004 and 2008, Pakatan Rakyat, in many areas, could not find enough candidates. In some places, they put out a candidate because the candidate was notorious for something. Example of that was that they put out a candidate successfully because that candidate took a video of somebody. So that's an example of where they lack candidates. But this time around, it was highly competitive because everybody wanted to stand. So it's interesting that for Barisan Nasional, the overall average is just slightly above 40% in terms of new candidates, and slightly lower for Pakatan Rakyat. But that gives you a flavor of how competitive the thing is as compared to early elections. Huh? The fifth significant point about this election, of course, is that there was a lot more polling done, again, compared to all the previous elections. The last time I count, there was, besides the famous ones like Merdeka Center and University Malaya, there was at least 7 or 8 different outfits, all doing polling. And these are the people who publish the results in public. On top of that, there are many private organizations who do what we call contracted research or contract polling. And they're all being done up and down all over the country, including East Malaysia. So obviously, the idea of polling, which is a well-established method used in developed societies, obviously this has taken off in Malaysia. People think that you can actually get some ground information from polling data. But personally, this is my own point of view, is that I'm very skeptical about some of the polling that's been done. Not all, but some of it. You have to be careful how you read the results. Okay, the other significant point compared to 2008, of course, is a huge number of increase in the number of new voters. Last time around, it was just above 10 million. This time, it's above 13 million. So roughly 1/3 increase in the number of new voters. Now, people get very excited over the new voters, but I'm here to tell you that what is important is not the number of new voters, it's actually the turnout rate. Because we don't practice compulsory form of voting in Malaysia. So even if you have a huge increase, some areas saw an increase about 70% new voters. If these people don't come out, they're not going to make a huge difference to the results. Seven point I want to make about the differences between this election and 2008 is that in the urban areas, campaigning has now shifted almost exclusively to cyberspace. If you look at all the campaigns around Kuala Lumpur, JB Penang, right, you will see that almost everything that you need to know can be found on the internet. All the candidates in all the urban areas have, at the minimum, they have a Facebook. Many have what I call the triple whammy. They have Facebook, they have Twitter, and they also have a blog site. In other words, they're trying to use this as the main means of communication to the potential voters. This is on top of all the pamphlets printed by the Barisan Nasional, by the central office and the central PR office. So a lot of them are using cyberspace, and they think that this is the way to go. And even on the Barisan side, last year there was a big convention where one of the senior Barisan members gave a speech, and he was very proud of the fact that Barisan Nasional has trained 10,000 cyber troopers. So this is a new Malaysian word that has been added to the English dictionary, cyber troopers. Okay. Another significant point, of course, is that for the very first time, on the opposition side at the very least, from what it appears on the surface, they are much more serious about going outside the comfort zone. So, for example, we know that DAP has, as the last time I looked, they've given up 2 quite safe seats to non-Chinese candidates. And PAS, as you know, is putting out 1 Chinese candidate in a fairly, not a very marginal seats where they have an advantage. So it looks like this time, compared to all the previous elections, they're more serious about electing somebody outside their core. Okay. Another point about significant difference from 2008, of course, is that the CSO community and the NGO community has really taken a deep root in these elections. So, for example, Bersih has taken the lead in trying to reform the electoral roll. Not only have they organized themselves throughout Malaysia, they've also organized themselves internationally. Many people do not know that there are more than 40 chapters of Bersih overseas. So you will find Bersih all over the world. And also there are many groups out there who are organizing themselves to be poll watchdogs. People like Tindak Malaysia, so on and so forth. So this is the very first time where the NGO committee has taken themselves directly and insert themselves in the middle of the election campaign. Okay. And the final point I want to make about the significant difference between 2008 and 2013 is that, and it's interesting, this has not been highlighted by the media, I couldn't understand why, is that the key Chinese leaders in the BN component parties are not standing. If you look at the MCA president, he's not standing. The president of Gerakan is not standing. And the president of SUPP is not standing. These 3 parties in the coalition, Barisan Nasional Coalition, they have the largest number of Chinese seats. And they're all not standing. So I don't want to speculate the reasons why they're not standing, but it's quite interesting to me that, you know, as you know, the Barisan model is UMNO, MCA, MIC, Gerakan. And the Chinese are the 2nd biggest component in the coalition. And yet all the leadership of all the Chinese component parties are not standing for these elections. Okay, now I want to move on to the second part of my talk, which is what are the key elements to watch out for in these coming general elections.